Well, hello everyone again. Greetings. On Tuesday this week, a news report came out, apparently from Bill Gates, telling us of his belief that there is a spiritual purpose behind everything that happens and outlining some of the positive benefits of the current crisis. Well, we can all see some of them, can't we? We can see how people are pulling together well. We can see how it's having a levelling effect, helping us understand we're all in the same boat. Perhaps it reminds us of the preciousness of our health. We could go on. We can always see positives in any situation. But it's that statement, I'm a strong believer there is a spiritual purpose behind everything that happens, that I just want to reflect on. It turns out that this was actually a fake message. Bill Gates didn't say this at all. Someone else is saying it. But it is something that's often said, isn't it? God must have a purpose in this, and what is it? The assumption is that God is behind whatever is happening. Now, some of us may have a completely different perspective. Some of us may want to rail at God. We may want to shake our fist at him. We may want to blame him for what's happening. Both of these perspectives assume that God is responsible, that what is happening is God's will. And I want to question whether that's really the case. It doesn't take much to read the Gospels and see that Jesus spends an awful lot of his time fighting against sickness and disease. And an awful lot of the time there's a sort of interchange between the idea of casting out demons and fighting against disease. It seems that they're all mixed up in the same boat together. You really get the strong impression that sickness and disease are not from God. They're from somewhere else, rather more evil. And that in this world there is beauty and there is evil, and God is the one who is seeking to make the world beautiful, and Satan is the one who is seeking to make the world ugly and destructive and trying to drag us down. So I want to take you to Psalm 74 actually, to help us just reflect on the current situation and know how to respond to it. Psalm 74 is a community lament. Last week I took you to an individual lament. No, sorry, it wasn't Psalm 46. No, in Holy Week I want to take you to a number of individual laments as we reflect on Jesus and the run-up, the passion narrative and the lead-up to the cross, which obviously is something that is a deeply sorrowful time. And some of those individual lament psalms can be tremendously helpful in helping us reflect. But this is a community lament, Psalm 74. It's reflecting on a national disaster, the destruction of Jerusalem at the hands of the Babylonians, and in particular the destruction of the temple, the place where Israel, the people of God, were able to worship. O God, why have you rejected us forever? Why does your anger smoulder against the sheep of your pasture? And so it goes on for 11 verses, until, as is typical for the lament psalms, it really is no holds barred in just feeling the depth of sorrow and unhappiness about the current situation. It then turns and says, but God is my king from long ago. He brings salvation on the earth. And then it goes on in verses 13 and 14. It was you who split open the sea by your power. You broke the heads of the monster in the waters. It was you who crushed the heads of Leviathan and gave it as food to the creatures of the desert. And the psalmist here is borrowing on really common dragon stories, monster stories that were current in the Near East and especially in Babylon, where the people of Israel had been taken into captivity. These were stories that were being told, stories that were told about the origin of the earth and how the forces of chaos were overcome. The way they told it was by Marduk, the chief god. The way the psalmist tells it is that it's about Yahweh, who actually gets named finally in verse 18. Remember how the enemy has mocked you, Yahweh, the Lord of Israel, who is also Elohim, the God of the nations. And he tells these dragon stories, and even we know about dragon stories, don't we? What language can we find to talk about the way that God has power over the monstrous forces that we can't figure out, but somehow are behind all of the evil that we see in the world? And dragon stories are a great way of doing it. We have in our own country the story of George and the dragon. But these dragon stories, you might ask, well, are they real, these creatures then? Or are they mythical? And the answer is they're both. They are certainly mythical because they're stories, but they're real because there are real monsters and real forces ranged against us. And what the psalm is trying to help us understand is that the God of Israel, the God of the world, the Creator God who made everything, actually has defeated those monsters. It goes on in verse 15 to the more familiar story from Genesis 1. It was you who opened up springs and streams. You dried up the ever-flowing rivers. The day is yours, and yours also the night. You established the sun and moon. It was you who set all the boundaries of the earth, and you made both summer and winter. So when we look around at this world and the evil that's in it, and the current crisis that we are experiencing included, and the invisible forces ranged against us, both the viruses we can't see, but also those evil forces that somehow are pulling strings behind there, the one thing that we can say with confidence is that God is even more powerful. He is fighting against evil. He created a world in which wonderful beauty was possible, but which meant that also horrific evil is possible. But he doesn't leave us alone. He fights for us, constantly fighting for us. It was you who split open the sea by your power and broke the heads of the monster in the waters. So I want to invite you to listen to Psalm 74 through the link that you have, to allow this psalm to help you experience the sorrow to start with, but also to shift gear, as the psalm does in the middle there, to recognise that God does have more power. He is fighting for us. But I also want to invite you then to pray. Prayer is one of our spiritual weapons, and also included in our weekly news this time are some prayers that have been brought to us via Heber, the local Baptist association, to help us join in the fight and pray also against the current situation and pray into it with confidence. Bless you all. Bye for now.